Try and get through this quite quickly as well. Number 4 and number 8, fairly similar answers. I mean, campaigning to make walking much more accessible or to encourage it more. Obviously, we want to invest in that, and that means not just having nudge campaigns to encourage people to start taking up, but also then improving pavements, improving the actual road to make it safer for cyclists. And then on the issue of number 5, electric car space outside homes, yes, absolutely, that's something that Greens would definitely support. And Jones, Green Party policy is on the smarter London-wide road charges. So having expanding the current charging zone, but making it smarter based on where there is congestion at certain times on certain roads, rather than just having a blanket congestion charge fee on between these hours and in these areas, and that means also switching to zero emissions as well, having more and more cars and switching to taxis and buses on zero emissions much quicker. And yeah, I mean, less cars, but we want to switch to zero emissions as quick as possible first, and then start encouraging people to think about cycling more often, and making it a lot easier actually for people to cycle. And that was also linked to number 10 as well. That last part about switching to zero emissions. Thanks.
Right. Question 4 on advertising campaign. The answer is yes. Removal of speed humps. Yes, there is a case. I know of a number of areas where one needs to look at how one can both achieve less speed but have more accessible network. Bus service speed. This was about bus lanes. Having continuity, I think that's important. Traveling across boroughs, so that there needs to be some power. Well, there are powers which need to be imposed. Nick on Energy Corp, I think your idea is an excellent one, and I will go further. Also, to be able to have better access for electric vehicles, they should be made something. As part of London Plan requirement as well for all future developments, of which there could be massive. And this is something, if re-elected, I will be taking on board, because planning is something which I've been working for a number of years, and something I'll continue to do so. With regards to me appearing, this is number 6, the charge of photo opportunity, absolute rubbish. You only look at questions I've asked the mayor, as well as the meetings I've had with resident associations, as well as with TFL, that speaks the real truth rather than fiction. From question number 6. Kishan Devani, get this right. I do absolutely 1000% support Sadiq Khan. Very good idea. From what I do not support is the hint of racism and Islamophobia coming from your dirty campaign launched by the Tories. I have to make it very, very clear.
Answer the question.
I have answered the question.
You do better than that.
If
There's no need to bring that in.
Let Navin finish, and then we can see if he's answered the
Sadiq
question.
Khan has clearly stated he does not support the third runway.
Now he does.
He does not support third runway. That's in here, as well as I do not support the third runway. And my position has been clear, both on the assembly as well as on the position I've taken in Harrow and Brent. With regards to number 8, I'll leave Ellie to deal with issues about pavements and state of roads. Indeed, yeah. Kilburn High Road issue, again, I have mentioned that I'll be very happy to work with the resident associations on survey and taking it forward. Warm lane plants, once again, I will be very happy to support those during the course of the time. Car pollution tax is an interesting one. I'm taking it with me to see what can be done. Definitely worth looking at it, because yes, why should the car industry dictate and pollute our air? With regards to introduction of trams, funny, I come from Mumbai, where I grew up. There were trams ripped up, and now they're back in again in certain areas. Manchester is doing extremely well, and this is what I'd like to see happen in Harrow as well. With regards to Tories privatising the air, my worry is that given another 5 years, that is what they will want to do.
Serious.
Okay.
A serious answer.
Siddiq's position on TFL, the last question. I 100% support freezing of fares for 4 years. We are talking about controlling air quality. This is a positive issue, positive initiative. If you want people to use public transport, you want to make it safe, efficient and affordable, not hiking up 40% public transport fares, which is what Boris Johnson has done over 8 years.
I'm sorry, folks, it's a perfectly reasonable question.
Look at the manifesto. He has clearly got a plan. Okay.
CFL don't agree with it.
Read this and
I'm going to be a bit dictatorial here because it's 10 o'clock.
It is.
People have asked questions. Questions will be answered. If it was 7 o'clock or even 9 o'clock, it would be fine to have exchanges, but we just don't have time. So I'm sorry about that, but that's how it's going to be.
Okay, so I picked up a few themes rather than going through the questions. Might be helpful in the interest of time. I just wanted to comment on Martin's comments about planning and just to acknowledge that I totally agree that actually there is more to do on enforcement, particularly around zero car developments, because what I hear is an increasing scepticism about them. So zero car, yeah, right, but they'll still have X, Y, and Z, and they'll park it around the car, whatever. And it just worries me that sort of starts to undermine some of the small steps we have made in the right direction. And I think greening generally is something we need to take more seriously. Both in terms of pocket parks, but also in terms of, there are places who have, gardens on car parks and stuff like that. And I just think making a greener borough and using the spaces we can in a green way, we should be doing, and I think we'll hopefully do lots more of in the future. And on trees, probably best to pick this up outside, but it does seem rather easier to remove a tree than to plant one. Partly it's a budget thing, but also it's a way of working thing. And I think if we worked more closely with residents and community groups, actually, we probably would be able to even out that balance a little bit more. Promoting sustainability and sustainable modes, yes, absolutely, we need to promote that, and social media is a great environmentally friendly way, unlike during the war when I guess posters were kind of the only option really. But the best way to promote that is by people telling one another that they do use sustainable modes. It does work, and they weren't stuck on the bus for an hour and a half getting from Wembley to Queen's Park, which is what happens to me occasionally, and and that we make it as easy as possible. So part of that, I was talking about the Blue Point London contract, part of that is an electric car club as well, because obviously the cost of electric vehicles is still pretty prohibitive for many residents, so that should help as well. On potholes and pavements, which I would be remiss of me not to mention. So partly this is a funding challenge, and I mentioned some of the ways that we are trying to redress that and respond to residents' genuine and very legitimate concerns. I mean, asking people to cycle with some of the sort of potholes that we have, that's going to show up somewhere else in our accident figures, isn't it? And then and walking on the pavements, needs to be safe if we want people to do it. So we are seeking a couple of million extra investment to try and tap into some of that. Last year, just to give you a sense of the challenge we have, in order to even be categorised for consideration for being fixed, potholes have to be quite substantial. I mean, any one of us looking at it would say, yeah, that's pretty bad, and that would only make it categorisable, as it were. Last year, we obviously fixed all of the ones that are considered to be high priority. They're done in a lump sum by our contractor Conway. But the things that are deemed to be medium priority, and when I say medium priority, I think any of us would think they were pretty serious. I mean, they are serious defects. We had the funding to fix 7.6% of those last year. So that's some sense of the challenge. Traffic calming, do you know what? This is a classic example of a real balancing act. So speed humps were pretty popular, now they're not, but equally slowing down the traffic is really important. So an area by area approach, I think, is needed. But as I say, I'm very keen that we go to consultation on a 20 miles an hour borough-wide scheme of some sort and see how that works, and then additional traffic calming where we need it. But actually the expectation and the behaviour is that we slow the speeds down. And the final thing from me is on the dedicated electric vehicle space outside. So tomorrow's parking consultation is all about the fact we have 33,000 car parking space and 56,000 households, each able to have three resident permits and unlimited visitors. That's within our controlled parking zones, though, and we're a borough of two halves in some ways. So if you look at the south of the borough and where we have controlled parking zones, although there are a couple in the north, that's quite a different character parking-wise to some of the areas that are closer to the border with Harrow. So I think that's not something we should dismiss out of hand, but in some areas would be very challenging. There are some quite innovative schemes. There's a German company who are piloting using lighting columns for charging points and so on. So there may be other ways that we can do it, but I think cables running across pavements is something I'm very keen to see an end to, not just from a personal perspective, but it's clearly a hazard. So that's all from me.
Ellie, I wonder if you could just also address the question of council reserves, financial reserves.
Council reserves. Oh well. If you know of additional money that we're not using, I'll be very
I'll put it forward. What you voted against our budget that did that very same thing.
So our budget reflects a very challenging process of prioritising, and don't forget that this is also the budget that needs to provide care for some of our most vulnerable residents and meet our housing challenge. So there are priorities to be balanced. I totally appreciate that these issues are, in terms of where we live, really, really important, and that's why we did listen to residents through the budget consultation and took out the proposed £50,000 saving that was going to be applied to our highways, so that would cover the sort of pothole pavements situation. So we are listening to residents and, as I say, seeking additional investment, which I'm very hopeful that I'll be able to secure to fix some more of our most dangerous defects.
Thank you. Holly, to round up.
Right, I'm going to speak for 20 minutes. Non-stop in acronyms. No, just two very quick points. I guess two challenges. One is to people on the panel. Electric cars are coming, they're the future, and there's actually very little that really governments and councils and everyone else can do about it. Partly because they're becoming so much better performing, they're becoming better to look at, they're more aspirational, you've got far more gadgets in them, and prices coming down. The latest Nissan Leaf costs about £16,000, so it's still expensive, but it's getting cheaper, and there's also huge potential to build things in the UK as well. So as much as governments or councils or local authorities, whatever, try and get it away, it's going to happen. The Volkswagen scandal has changed things. There are an awful lot of people for whom they made what they thought were very eco-conscious decisions to buy diesel cars because of CO2, who are now find out that these cars are pretty polluting. So I think this tide is inevitable, which means that all of you have got, in whichever role you are operating or end up in, have got a challenge. Where are they going to park? How are they going to charge? How are they going to provide the potentially the backup for renewables? Smart grids can mean that an electric car plugged in can actually be storing excess electricity on a windy day, feeding it out on a still day. All of this stuff is going to need happening. It's going to need to happen, and I think we're probably at the cusp of the end of the combustion engine. But I don't think we are at the cusp of the end of the car. People like cars. People like driving around. People like having their own space and feeling like them and their families are secure. So I completely agree, actually, with the Green Party candidate who's saying that we have to clean up the vehicles which are there as a priority before we start trying to get them down, although we do need to get numbers down. So how you deal with that, don't have the answers, but it's going to be a question that you're all going to have to face. And the second challenge is to the people here. It sounds to me like most of you are campaigners in one form or another. You might not call yourself that in your business cards or job descriptions or whatever, but I slightly disagree with you, Robin, that this isn't a front page issue. I think it is becoming a front page issue. It's nothing like where it needs to be, and you're absolutely right that were it to be Ebola killing 40,000 a year, there'd be one hell of a response. But Nick Cecil at the Stand is writing about it pretty much every day. We're seeing not just the Guardian bleating on about it, but the Times have been doing some stuff on it. Even the Telegraph. So it is becoming an issue, and it cuts across all sorts of demographics. Actually, there's no reason why somebody who cycles to work on a £5,000 carbon fibre bike to their city job through some of the worst pollution in Europe can't be engaged on the issue of air pollution, just as somebody who's trapped living next to a hugely polluted road. So it's relevant to so many people's lives. And that means that you've actually got an opportunity, because if you're trying to stop a development that's being built that shouldn't be, or you're trying to stop car parks being built, you've got an increasingly cogent and powerful toolkit in your campaigning, weapon in your campaigning toolkit. The reason that Heathrow probably won't get built is because it's been set up to pass air quality challenges which it cannot pass. And the Volkswagen scandal has changed all that. So I would ask you to box clever. We must tackle air pollution, but it can also be used to tackle all sorts of other things that we may not want to see, or we may want to see more of. So keep up the good fight and sign up with our campaign. So that's everything.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very, very much, panellists. Thank you very much, everybody who's come and asked questions. People who are members of Brent Friends of the Earth and anybody else who would like, come round the table. Just going to see if those... Aha! Oh, I see, right.